I'm pressure canning chicken soup today so that I can make my favourite Avgolemono chicken soup, which is Greek for eggy-lemon chicken soup. The soup is great if you're feeling unwell or recovering from an illness, but you can't pressure can the finished soup because it has rice and egg whites in it, and you can't pressure can those. So I'm going to just can up the chicken and the broth and add in the rice, egg whites, and even the lemon juice when I'm serving. That way I can get the vitamin C out of the lemons, which will help with recovery. But I'll show you how I do that later. Hi guys, welcome to Moat Cottage Homesteading. I'm Elissa. Earlier today, I cleaned out 2 chickens and cooked them in my slow cookers. In this soup, I'm going to be using the chicken meat and the broth that the chickens are cooked in. So I place my chickens in the slow cooker and then I cover them with boiling water as much as I can fit in my slow cookers, which is 1 inch or 2 inches above the chicken. Then I added in some sea salt, which I use Himalayan sea salt, and pepper. Be generous with the pepper because this is giving it a lot of flavour. And then I let them slow cook on low for 5 hours or when the meat is falling off the bone. While the chickens were cooking, I set up for removing the bones as well as for the pressure canning process. Because it gets pretty messy, I cover up the canning side so that none of the chicken residue or splatters of chicken get on my canned goods, because that all needs to be clean for canning. I've set up the pressure canner, so that's ready to go with water in it and a little bit of vinegar, and the lid's all set up with the dial gauge and the gasket. My chicken's still pretty hot. I try and cool it down enough so that I can handle it without burning my hands. But I'm not very good at waiting and being patient to let it cool down a little bit more than it probably should be. I'm separating the meat into this bowl and bones and gristle in this bowl. I don't want any of the bones or gristle to be in my canned soup at the end. And I shred the meat up as I go. That just makes it a little bit easier, and it's also a second check as well, just in case a little bones got through. I can hear a fly flying around. It wasn't here all morning, and as soon as I got the chicken out, it appeared from who knows where. It's pretty hot today. It's 38 degrees at the moment, which is just over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Which is not really a good day to be canning, but I already had the chickens defrosted and I was ready to can. The temperature gauge just kept going up though. Sometimes you just have to do these things when you have to. All of these scrap bones I will be putting in the fox trap. I wouldn't put them in the maggot bucket because the maggots are for the chickens and I don't like putting any bird in the maggot bucket. I just feel like that's a little bit too close to home if they're eating those maggots that have eaten a bird. I don't think that's right, but that's just my opinion. But it's perfect for the fox trap so it doesn't get wasted. Because the meat's slow cooked for about 5 hours, the bones break up, so you've got to be really careful that you don't get any of those fine bones in there. And most of the fat can go out too, we don't want that in there. If you were making it normally and not pressure canning it and just going to eat it, then the fat would be fine if you wanted to leave that in. But for pressure canning, I try and take as much fat out as I can. I was able to squat the fly so that he's not going to get in the way while I'm trying to can up the jars. I'm straining out the broth just to make sure there's no little bones in it. I'm all set up, ready to start putting the soup in the jars. I've got my rings, my lids, which are in water. I've got some vinegar in a bowl. I've got all my jars, they're sterilised and clean. I've got my tools, and obviously I have the soup as well. I just need to check my jars to make sure there's no cracks or nicks in them, and check the rim to make sure that it's a good rim. Otherwise the lids won't seal on. I'm spreading the meat out between all of the jars. I probably want about half full, but loosely packed, of chicken. If it's cold when you're canning, then make sure your jars are nice and warm. I don't really have to worry about that because, as you know, it's really hot here, so the jars are not going to be cold. There isn't going to be a shock when I put the hot liquid into the jars, so there's no chance of them cracking when I do, because it's nearly as hot as the hot liquid. And I haven't even turned the canner on yet, which I'll have to do in a minute, but I'm sort of putting it off because it's just so hot already. There's a little bit of meat left, which we can have for dinner. Top the jars up with broth, leaving about 1 inch head space. I do it by eye to start with, and then I remove the bubbles and then measure again. So move any air bubbles out and then measure. If there's too much liquid, take it out. If there's not enough, add some in. I'm using a clean tea towel dipped in white vinegar to wipe the rims of the jars and the threads as well. I don't want any of that sticky residue, that food oil from the chicken to be on the top of that jar lid or on the thread, because it'll end up going mouldy if I can't get it off later. So I try and get as much off now as I possibly can, but definitely off the top of the jar so that the lid can sit flat on and seal properly. Then I use a dry piece of the cloth just to give that a wipe. And then I use another piece of the cloth that hasn't been used yet to do the next jar. Place the lid on, center it, and the ring goes on finger tight. Place the lid on, center it, and the ring goes on finger tight. It doesn't need to be too tight, just finger tight's fine. I've been using the 4-jar lids for over a year now, I think. I'd have to look back at my videos to actually know for sure. I'm pretty sure it's over a year now. I'm pretty sure it was midway through 21. And I'm really happy with them. So if you need some lids, stock up and get them. The 4-jar lids are great. I've got links in the description below. Now it's time to fill up the canner. I've got my first rack in the bottom, and I'm putting in my 8 jars on that rack. And as I said, I've already got my water and vinegar inside as well. The next rack goes on, and the rest of the jars. I make sure there's enough room for all the jars to sit nicely. And when I'm moving the jars, I don't slosh them around because I don't want any of the fat getting in the way of the seal. Place the lid on into the locked position. Adjust the temperature up to medium-high so the canner can build up pressure. When steam's coming out of the vent pipe consistently, we time for 10 minutes. Once the 10 minutes is up, we put our weighted gauge on. The amount of weight we have on our gauge depends on our altitude. So check the altitude where you are and work out what amount of weight you need to have on. Once the canner's built up enough pressure for your altitude, then you can start timing and process your chicken soup. For pint jars, that's going to be an hour and 15 minutes, and for quart jars, it's an hour and a half. Whenever I can on a different burner, I mark the nice spot where it sits nicely at the temperature I need it to, so it's easy to find next time. When the processing time's up, turn off the heat and cool the canner to 0 pressure. Don't be tempted to touch your weighted gauge and let heat out quickly to help the canner, because that will actually reduce the canner too quickly and the temperature will drop and the cans may break or crack. When the can is at 0 pressure, let it sit for 5 minutes, then you can remove the weighted gauge and the lid. The lid's still going to have steam and hot water in it, so open it away from your face and let any hot water drip back into the canner. Then put your lid somewhere where it's not going to damage its surface, because it's hot. Now let the canner sit for 10 minutes and then you'll be able to remove the jars. Because the jars are super hot and will be sitting here for 12 hours, I have them somewhere where they're not going to get touched, and they're on a chopping board with a clean tea towel. And they'll need to sit here for 12 hours before the rings get taken off. The only ingredients I need to buy to make the eggy-lemon chicken soup is the rice, the salt and pepper. The water, the duck eggs or the chicken eggs, and the lemons I can get from the homestead. And I can also breed and raise my own chickens as well. Which means not only is it a flavourful soup, it's also a good homesteading soup. Only one of my jars didn't seal, so I can remove the rings now, give them a wash, label and date them, and put them on the shelf. The one that didn't seal I can eat now. I usually keep rice in the fridge for a snack, so it's already cooked. This is basmati rice, and if I end up not eating it all, some of it goes to the dogs with their food, and that actually helps stop the grass burning when they go to the toilet on it. This now gets heated up on the stovetop, and I want it hot but not boiling. For a pint jar, I want half a beaten egg, and I'm going to beat that in. And that gives the soup a really white, creamy look to it. And you shouldn't have any chunky bits of cooked egg in it either. It should be smooth. So that's all cooked in now, and we can add in our lemon juice. This is also to taste. So it depends on how you like it as to how much lemon you add in. If you need a little bit of extra water, you can add that in, or if you've got some bone broth in the fridge, you can add that in too if you want a different consistency, if you want it a bit more liquidy. Or you can just add less chicken into your jars when you're canning them. And now it's ready to eat. If you'd like to see more from my channel, you're welcome to subscribe. And thanks for all the likes and shares too. Thanks for watching.